Hi there and good morning. This is my video response, actually my much belated video response to the work from week 6. Um, so first, before I give you specific feedback, there's some housekeeping issues I want to talk about. The first is that um, some of the groups are finding more and more complex ways to post their work, which may be making things difficult for the group leaders. If it's working for you all, then there's no need to change. But I know some of the group leaders from the past weeks have gotten in touch with me to say they're having trouble finding responses. So just as a reminder, my initial suggestion was that the group leader for that week sets up a discussion and then people post their response to that discussion. Some of the groups are using that very effectively. Some of them are also using blog posts very effectively. Again, it doesn't matter so much to me, but try to be respectful and responsive to the group leader so that they could post their 3x3 in a timely fashion. Okay, that's it about that. Secondly, again, another housekeeping issue is that you'll notice, or maybe you haven't noticed, that each week I leave comments for each of you on your work, and sometimes I've asked questions or asked for clarification. And as far as I can tell, you haven't posted any. So do take a look at the comments and let me know if you have any questions. And certainly let me know if you post responses because I'd love to see them. And then lastly, just housekeeping wise, remember that you have coming up the literacy case study. So be sure to take a look at that, the instructions for that, so that you complete that thoroughly as expected and on time. Okay, so now looking at the work for week 6, generally you all did a really, really good job dealing with the issues raised in week 6, which primarily were about, or at least in the way that you've talked about them, but primarily about the difference between writing as a product focused goal and writing as a process focused goal. And many of you articulated that really well. I'm thinking of Joanna and Joan Marie and Tammy in particular kind of identified that distinction pretty well, and I thank them for that. What many of you also raised in your responses was, so let me just take a step back. I identified those 3 people, but generally you all really kind of grappled with that and talked a lot about how you are trying to address in your classrooms the product of writing versus the process of writing. And some of you even indicated, that perhaps using sentence stems and other things that are typical ways of scaffolding might actually be getting in the way of the longer term development of these kinds of skills with your students. And so I'm intrigued about that and am looking forward to hearing more from that as we enter the second half of the course. Many of you also raised an issue which I think has been there for the first 5 or 6 weeks, and some of you have been mentioning a lot, some of you haven't mentioned it at all, so I'm not sure whether it's present for everyone or not, but many of you have been talking about how do I do all this in the context of teaching whatever I'm teaching. A lot of you are science teachers and some of you aren't, but how do I have kids that maybe don't speak English as a first language, or at least they're not proficient in English, writing English and reading English, obviously. I have students that are reading and writing below grade level, sometimes significantly, even if they're on grade level in their science work, for example. And I have this content that I'm supposed to teach. So how do I do everything at the same time? How do I enhance? How do I give students, whether it's in Pong cycles or something else, how do I give them work that really deepens their proficiency in the area of literacy, particularly in writing in this case, and still do all the other work that I've had that I have to do? And while most of you that have raised that have said that some version of, I believe that if students could read and write more effectively and efficiently and compellingly, that their understanding of whatever content they're dealing with in my science class or somewhere else would go up. However, I have however long I have with them, I have them for a semester or a year. What can I do? And so there's a couple of parts. Some of you have mentioned, and I want to say that this is Cece, although I may not be entirely right about this, but I know that some of you have talked about, collaborating. Janelle, I think, mentioned this too. Collaborating with your English colleagues. But and that I'd love to hear more about that, and I'm sure that work is going well, or at least is moving things forward. But what is interesting to me is that there is this dilemma, which most of you have articulated pretty thoroughly, and that I'm confident is there in the practice of your teaching. However, at the same time, what I'm wondering about, most of you are looking for individual solutions, and I'd like to hear more as the weeks go on about where you are or aren't connecting with your colleagues in other content areas, across grades, literacy specialists if you have them, ELL specialists if you have them, special educators if you have them. I'm interested in ways that you're finding to kind of multiply the effect. So sometimes networking with other people can multiply that effect and has the result of giving you more time in some ways. Okay, I hope all that's clear. Okay, so that's it for now. This is kind of a brief take on the week 6 work. I'm looking forward to seeing the work for week 7, and then within a couple of weeks, the work on your literacy case studies. As always, if you need anything, shout.